Dungeons. It's meant to be played with swords, bows, and everything you can imagine that will kill mobs. Items that have a damage stat, the ability to shoot mobs where your arms cannot reach, and anything else that was recently exposed to be an overpowered sword in a YouTube tutorial. Without these weapons, we are the opposite of something. Which is nothing. We can't do anything without precious swords. This theory was showcased by the sociologist called Dragoon in a video where he kills slayers without any weapons, showing that this game was meant to be played with weapons. However, this opens up the possibility for situational irony. Situational irony is when something happens that you did not expect. You expect people to play dungeons with dungeon weapons, but what actually happened is I will be only using fists, and sometimes traps when available. Therefore, this idea is technically funny. So without further ado, let's get into it. Here are the rules. You can bring swords with you, but you can't damage mobs with them. You can only use the harmless sword abilities, such as heal or teleport. If you use damage abilities, you are out. As in real life out. And you may place traps down, which deals a lot of damage but is sometimes not worth it because you have to actually lure the mobs onto the trap. Also, they are buggy. Any other method of dealing damage is outlawed. The only goal is to just complete the dungeon, no S+ is needed. And yeah, that's basically the rules. It all starts in the dungeon entrance, a small map that only has the Watcher mini boss. After realizing I had the mage class, which means all your melee hits deal a pathetic amount of damage, I started to panic and die. The original plan was to let the mobs kill each other like how skeletons accidentally do in survival mode, but then I had an okay idea. Traps. They weren't technically a sword, or a bow, or a mage item. It's just a pressure plate that blows up. It was going to be genius until I ran out of them. But for the time being, I just bombed all the rooms I was in. After painstakingly arriving at the blood room with a few traps left, a bone-chilling discovery was made. I could only have 5 active traps at once, and there were some traps left deactivated in past rooms. It was on the last blood room mob, and the trap refused to blow up. Maybe the mob was not heavy enough. So I just killed him in a fistfight after a few hundred punches. Finally, the entrance was done. But as the name suggests, it was only the entrance. For the next few floors, I would need assistance. So allow me to introduce you to the squad. Ben Minecraft, 2NFG, and Doofer. I couldn't find a 5th person, so we just headed in. After warning everyone to switch to Berserker, except Ben Minecraft for some reason, we painstakingly punched these mobs to death. It was a very humbling task. It also taught me an extremely deep lesson. Without our swords, weapons, and items, we are just on the same level as the skeletons and zombies that lurk the dungeons. It was too deep. After punching our way through the dungeon, we actually made it to the blood room fast, at 2.5 minutes. The blood room was still pretty easy even though I ran out of traps. I just punched them to death. Some of my teammates could agree with this. But coming next was the floor 1 boss. Most of you probably don't remember fighting him, so let me give you a recap. The boss can't damage you to death, but it will annoy you to death. And also it had 250,000 health, causing my teammates to doubt themselves. But coming from the same type of species that made it onto the moon, we should be able to pull this off. And after giving him a old-fashioned school fist fight, he decided he could not take it any longer. So he turned 90 degrees and lay 6 feet deep. The reward for this painful fistfight was nothing short of disappointing. However, there was not much time to be disappointed. The biggest challenge lay ahead. Floor 2. After drinking my last dungeon potion, it was time to head in. First up was a lost adventurer. To recap, they dodge death by consuming golden apples. You can usually kill them before they eat a golden apple, but this is a fist-only challenge. Which meant you could kiss your DPS goodbye. So we just punched him to death as he ate a golden apple. And another one. Then he died. After going into the fairy box, we walked into one of those rooms where you had to kill every mob that had a star next to its name. Which was basically all of them. This was absolutely not fun at all. I'm surprised you can even punch these mobs to death. I am thankful for every point of damage I dealt to these mobs. And at least we weren't dying to them. And now, the blood room. This was not designed at all to be beaten with fist only. We had to spam traps everywhere. Once in a while we got a pretty satisfying streak of well-laid traps, but that meant nothing to these mobs. But once you do that a lot, it will mean something to these mobs. And once it means too much, they will die. Except for one. His name was Leech, and he was gaining health from cornering one of the teammates. He was simply not going to die from a fist fight. Until he died. Now it was time for the floor 2 boss. To recap, the floor 2 boss has a priest who heals 3 other mini-bosses. Once you kill all of them, they will all respawn and a guy called Scarf will fight you. Once you kill Scarf you win the game. But one does not simply kill Scarf, a 1 million health boss, using only fist. Watch and learn. For the first few minutes, I was just targeting some random mini-bosses, and one of the teammates even died. But eventually, I focused on the priest. After getting splashed with 520 health, I was determined I was going to kill the priest in a 1v1 fight, except the one was running away from me, so it wasn't really a fight, it was a chase. But after a while, me and another guy took the priest down. This coincided with Ben Minecraft killing another mini-boss with his bare hands. This left the 2 last mini-bosses, the archer and the mage. Without their colleagues, they were helpless and their screams echoed into nothing. That was until Scarf came and revived everyone. So we had to do it all over again. But we did not give up. We killed the healer again but left the other people alive because they weren't really that important. We were unstoppable. Scarf quaked in his boots as we charged forward with nothing except our bare hands. We gave him a sound beating, and he could not run from us. His health dropped to 100,000, then 10,000, then 1,000. And Scarf was history. One of the most potent necromancers in Skyblock, who had trained for years in necromancer school, had died from punching. And I thought that was the end of the road. The floor 3 boss is pretty difficult to do without weapons. To recap, a professor owns 4 guardians that have to be taken down at the same time, or else they will just respawn one by one forever. Once you take down all of them, you will fight the professor. He becomes mad and turns into a guardian as the room floods. But is it punchable to death? We'll see. After dropping all the old people and scouring the lands for the best catacomb players the world had ever laid their eyes on, I found a stacked party. Reeve Tech, which is Sky League on top. Flaming Knives, who is catacomb level 71. Jelly Kiddo. And Cactus. There was no way this could go wrong. The mobs were a bit tough to kill, especially without any traps. I found myself spamming the zombie sword while running away. My teammates didn't really get anywhere as well. We spent a whole 2 minutes beating up an angry archaeologist and spamming traps under him. More time was lost to the lost adventurers and their freaking golden apples. But nobody really died. Well, anyone that was notable. It wasn't hard, it was just tedious. Luckily someone was nice enough to give me some traps, which were useful for a whole 2 minutes until we were warped into the boss by someone I did not know. I have never had a worse dungeon experience than this before. The guardians were pretty fast to kill with fists, but so slow that the healthy guardian just healed all the others. It took about 6 minutes until we had all the guardians below 100,000 health, and we just punched them all to death. But that was only phase 1. Phase 2 is where the 3 million health professor starts to hit hard. Since we took so long to get to this phase, there were rogue guardians everywhere. They are pretty annoying. So I spent most of this phase killing them. Also we somehow punched him to death, so we entered phase 3, where he is a big guardian floating in the atmosphere. The dream was becoming true. We might actually beat floor 3 with fist only. There were times when the boss focused its lag machine on me. He somehow knew my weakness in real life. His health dropped to half, then below 1 million. I could taste humanity's hardest achievement yet in my mouth. After the last laser was lasered, the professor had died of an intense fist fight. We had done it. Beating dungeons with fist only. Nobody really wanted to do floor 4 because it requires you to shoot a bow, which technically is a weapon. Without using weapons, floor 4 would be impossible. So everyone just left. Well, that marks the end of my dungeon fist only adventure. If you don't want to miss out on any cutting edge videos, make sure to subscribing button. Good. Bye.